How's it going, everyone? In today's video, we're going to learn how we can create a USB holder in FreeCAD, one of the most difficult softwares I've ever had to learn. And this tutorial is going to be perfectly beginner friendly. All we're going to learn how to do is create a USB holder, which is practically just a 3D rectangle with some rounded corners and a simple slot where the USB goes. So it's really just the perfect project for getting started with FreeCAD. And the very first thing we want to do is go to the Start menu and create a new parametric body. Then we're going to create a new sketch, and we want to create this new sketch on the XY plane. This will allow us to draw the first rectangle. To draw a rectangle, we will use the rectangle tool. And here we will drag and create a rectangle. Now, before you tap on Enter, we need to change the dimensions. The width will be set to 20, then we'll tap on Enter, and the height will be set to 10. Or I meant to say that the other way around. The width is set to 10 millimeters, and the length is set to 20 millimeters. Now, to exit the rectangle selection tool, or the rectangle creation tool, you can tap on Escape. And we have one problem here. The rectangle is in a weird location, and you can manually drag it around, or we can set some constraints to make sure that it stays perfectly centered to this origin dot. Now I'm going to hold down Command to select the dots, and then I'm going to go up here to the Symmetric Constraint tool and tap on it. And this will constrain the rectangle perfectly to the center. Now there's no chance that we can move it or accidentally modify the location of this rectangle. And if it's your first time using FreeCAD, this tasks panel is probably going to be on the right side, but you can just drag it around and put it wherever you like. I decided to put it here, or now it's not where it wants to be, but if you want, you can drag it to, come on, just go in there. Circle and get in there. There we go. But I chose to drag it to the model tab so that I would have it in one section, since otherwise it takes a lot of space on the screen. For example, if I left it here, I wouldn't have that much space to work with when creating a rectangle. So I thought it was just much better to keep it over here with the model. Now, as soon as you're done creating this rectangle, you can tap on Close. And here we have our first rectangle, which right now is a 2D sketch. So what we want to do next is make sure the sketch is selected and click on Pad. And I'm just going to pad it 10 millimeters and click on OK. Now we have a beautiful gray stick of butter. Also, as a quick tip, if you go down to the bottom, you'll notice that I have touchpad selected. This makes it easier to move an object around if you're using a touchpad. All I'm doing is holding down Shift to drag the object around, and if you hold Shift and click, you can rotate the object. At any point, if you're in a weird situation, I'd recommend going to the isometric view, because it will just reset it to a view which is easy to work with. Using the scroll wheel, you can zoom in and zoom out, which also makes it easier to work with. Next, we're going to select the top of our object. And here, we're going to create a new sketch. And once again, we're going to select the rectangle tool and create a small rectangle. This will be the hole for the USB stick. And the measurements I found that work best with my 3D printer are 12.35 by 4.85. The dimensions I found online for the USB stick was 4.5 by 12. But if you make the dimensions perfect, there's a chance that when the plastic expands or shrinks, the USB stick is not going to fit perfectly. So I found that 0.35 was the perfect, I think they call it tolerance, or amount I needed to make sure that the USB stick would fit perfectly in the hole. Anyway, right now I'm going to tap on Escape, and I'm going to set some constraints once again. So I'm going to hold down Command and select the center. And then as a shortcut, you can tap on S to apply the symmetric constraint. When you hover over these tools, you'll see that the shortcut will be displayed next to their names. So in case you're tired of moving your mouse to the tool each time, you can try to memorize it. And next time you can just tap on S or whatever tool shortcut is displayed. So for the rectangle, we can use either G or R. Hello? And I just found out that we need to use both G and R to activate the rectangle tool. Anyway, now that we have this rectangle on the surface of the stick of butter, we're going to click on Close. Then we can select the sketch, and what we're going to do next is tap on or click on the pocket tool. And I want to make this pocket 9mm deep. And I actually exited out of that a bit prematurely. So let's go back to the pocket, and I want to set a taper angle to 0.10. Now you're probably not going to notice what that did because it was such a minuscule amount. But if you were to change this to something such as 2 degrees, oh, that should have been negative. You'll notice that it will start to become a bit wider towards the end. And the bigger the taper angle, the more it becomes wide towards the end. And it's a good thing I showed you this because what I meant to do earlier was to change this to -0.10. I wanted to get a bit slimmer as we reach the bottom to really make it easy to slide the USB stick in towards the bottom. Because even if there's some sort of imperfection, we'll know that it will safely enter the top and get tighter towards the bottom, making sure that regardless of how we print it, the USB stick will fit. Now I don't really want to deform it that much, so I'm just doing 0.10, which is almost unnoticeable, but it's something. Next I'll tap on OK, and at this point you can already print it. We have a perfectly functional USB stick holder. Now I'm holding down Option to rotate the object, and as you can see, it has depth, it has walls surrounding it, and a flat bottom. It's the perfect USB stick holder. But I want to show you one more thing before we conclude this tutorial, and that's how to round the corners, because that looks pretty sick. So here I'm going to hold down Command and do my best to round, or to select all the corners. And next we can click on the fillet tool. I do want to reset the view because this is annoying. And here we can select the radius. The bigger the radius, the more it gets rounded. So in this example, I'm going to set it to 2mm and click on OK. And now we have a rounded USB stick holder. I keep on forgetting the rest of the title. Something else we can do is tap on the surface and add a chamfer to add some more effects. There's so much we can do here to make this look like a really complicated part. And at any point, if you want to edit something, you can just select it by tapping on the setting you just added and changing the specs. So here you can edit it to whatever measurement you want. We can make it a bit less, such as 0.2. And now we have a nice ridge on the surface. And if you want to do that on the bottom, you can select the bottom and add that effect. And once again, we'll add 0.2 and tap on Enter. And just like that, we have a very interesting USB holder. And let's pretend that the hole is too deep. You can always go back to the pockets and change the depth. So maybe we want it only to be 5mm deep. You can change it here, tap on Enter, and now it's much more shallow. Oh my god, it's disappearing. So the USB stick doesn't go so far in. And again, I found FreeCAD to have one of the steepest learning curves, but once you get a hang of it, it becomes quite simple to manipulate shapes. I was using Blender for the first few days, and while I found that to be much easier, I just knew that it just wasn't going to be powerful enough to do what I want to do in FreeCAD. So I hope you enjoyed the first tutorial. I will try to make many more as I learn more about the software. I'm not perfectly proficient at this software, but I just got a 3D printer, so I'm very excited to share my experiences with all of you regarding the problems that a beginner might face when creating a project. The only thing I want to share with you is my experience, because if you go to the FreeCAD documentation and you try to build that beginner Lego project, I found that to be so hard for a beginner. So we will definitely visit that counterfeit or mock Lego project, because it's still good to know how to design that in FreeCAD. You can learn a lot from designing a Lego, but as the first project, I found that to be so overwhelming for a beginner, so I skipped that entirely and went for a USB holder. Anyway, do let me know in the comment section down below whether there's something you'd like me to create, or if you have any other questions regarding FreeCAD. I will make tutorials on it, and I will even show you the prints, because the goal here is to learn how to 3D print anything that we want to 3D print without just downloading it from the internet. That way we get the perfect specifications and full rights to what we create.